Hello and welcome to Modern Manufacturing Technology Day. So, thank you all for joining us today. We're looking forward to a day packed full of great content talking about how to prepare for the future in the manufacturing world. You'll hear from experts on technology, experts in the manufacturing space. You'll hear from peers in your industry as well too that'll offer some insights on what's working for them. So I'm really excited to kick the day off with today's keynote. So our keynote is going to be called Manufacturing Technology, Where We've Been, Where We Are, and What's Next. My name is Eric Newell. I'm the CEO of Stoneridge Software. So really excited to share this content with you and spend the day with you. Hopefully you take some time to comment in the ask questions or make comments as we go throughout the day. We'll be there to interact with you, share feedback, answer any questions that you have as the day goes along as well too. So looking forward to the interaction that we have. So with that, let's jump in and talk about where we've been, where we are, and what's next for the manufacturing technology world. So again, Eric Newell, CEO of Stoneridge, spent 13 years at Microsoft before starting Stoneridge 13 years ago, author of the book on how to implement Microsoft Dynamics technology. And one of my favorite things is that I asked ChatGPT to describe my leadership style, and it said it's often described as transformational and visionary. So it's got to be right. Let's jump in by actually taking some time to look backwards at where technology has been and where manufacturing has been. So if you scroll all the way back into the 1700s, when everybody had like a seamstress in the family or someone putting together clothes, a lot of people were putting food on the table together, especially in rural areas, because there just weren't mass production of a lot of different things, right? There was no mass production of shirts or pants or things like that back in those days. If you wanted shirts and pants, you needed to make them yourselves, and that was usually a painstaking process that involved a sewing machine and being able to find cotton or being able to find material somewhere and putting it together yourself. And really the first industrial revolution was really putting some of these pieces together in the beginning of this concept of manufacturing. So a couple things that really changed the world there were the invention of the spinning jenny, which you can see in the upper right, and then the cotton gin, which is on the bottom, or sorry, the spinning jenny is on the left, the cotton on the right. And those are really important inventions for being able to increase the speed with which you could turn cotton into a shirt. And it really allowed for the ability to do this in more of a factory style. So that was one of the first factories that you put together. And if you think about some of the hallmarks of the first industrial revolution, you had mechanization, steam engine, water power, all of those things helped industrialize the world and actually drive more people to live in cities, as you could start to have more specialized roles than everyone having to do everything for their own survival. Then if you think about in the 1800s, there was this job called a coachman. Now, there were tons of people that were employed as coachmen, and coachmen, their job was to take people around the streets of large cities with a carriage or horse, or if any of you were at the Leadership Summit, I talked a lot about the California Gold Rush, and there would be people that would volunteer to take people to California on some of these trails as well too. Now you can still find a few coachmen left. If you've been to Central Park in New York City, you might be able to see a coachman or two, but there really is no longer any number of people that even registers with this job of a coachman, because technology changed and it made it not as necessary anymore. And the reason why that changed was because of really the second industrial revolution. So you started to be able to afford automobiles. And so you could get around by yourself with some gasoline in your engine, as opposed to waiting for horses and a coachman to take you around. You also had electricity and lights, and that opened up a world of career opportunities, a chance to work late into the evening because you had light, and chance to get around and be able to experience more of the city. So these were some of the innovations in the early 1900s or late 1800s that really brought about the second industrial revolution. I don't know how many of you have ever used a typewriter. In my first job out of college, actually in 96, one of the things I had to do was produce reports for the state of Minnesota because I was a regulatory analyst. And I had to actually type my reports into a form. And I had not used a typewriter before. So I talked to some of the ladies in accounting and I traded them my computer services for their ability to type. and we worked out a partnership there. But typewriting was a big part of the world. In fact, the first ever typewriter competition was in 1888, and it was won by a man named Frank McGurran, who was a pioneer of the touch typing method, which caught on after everyone saw how fast he could do it because he won the competition substantially. But if you think about it, there's not a typing competition anymore because people aren't using typewriters anymore. And that's because of the third industrial revolution, which was really the digital revolution. In 1946, the electronic numerical integrator and computer was invented by Presper Eckert and John Mauchly at the University of Pennsylvania. And so that what started the idea of being able to have computers and being able to take advantage of some of that computational power kind of started then. The internet started in 1969, but it really didn't gain steam until in the early 90s. If you think about some of the other things that we see a lot of today, you've got mobile phones. The first mobile phone was created by Motorola in 1983. But again, it wasn't really until the late 90s and the introduction of the iPhone that things started to pick up quite a bit. Digital cameras were first invented in 1988, and now you can't have a phone without a digital camera. And then cloud computing became a big thing in the 2000s, and that invented one of the greatest inventions of all time, which is social media. I'm sure everybody agrees with that. So the digital revolution is really powering this. This is really what the third industrial revolution is about. And so as we think about where we've been, now let's talk about where we are today. And we're in this fourth industrial revolution. So this fourth industrial revolution, or Industry 4.0, was something that was brought forward about 12 years ago by the chair of the World Economic Forum named Klaus Schwab. And what he was seeing is that this is going to be a technical revolution where you blur the lines between technical and physical spheres. So that's really what the fourth industrial revolution is about, is that merger of digital technology and physical technology. So if you think about it, it refers to like the integration of digital technologies into manufacturing and industry, smart automation, artificial intelligence, data exchange in real time. And it's really transforming how businesses operate. If you think about it, the Internet of Things started several years ago, but now I just got a new phone and I'm realizing how many apps that I have that control like the sprinkler system in my yard, or I have a backup generator. I've got an app for that. Like I've got an app for my garage door opener. So you're now starting to get to the point where the Internet of Things is really not even something is starting to be something you just take for granted because it's just about everywhere you see. And then smart automation you're seeing in so many different places as well. And I'll talk more about that in the manufacturing space. And of course, we can't talk about today's technology without talking more about artificial intelligence. So you hear a lot about that throughout the day, and I'll talk a little bit about it in the keynote, but it's certainly going to change a lot of how the physical acts or interacts with the digital world here in the future. So if we think about some other examples of Industry 4.0 and the way automation is changing things, one clear example is just go to Walmart or just go to any grocery store. Even my local grocery store in a town of about 12,000 people has self-checkout. as well too. The fact of the matter is hardware and software have improved and they've come together in such a way now that you are able to actually make it good. I remember when they first tried that about 5 or 6 years ago, and almost every time you did a transaction, you'd have to get the helper there to come over and get you through it. But now it works pretty well. And you can go through a line faster than you could if you waited in line for someone. So people are starting to prefer to do self-service automation. Autonomous driving, there's been some recent releases from Tesla with their version 14 of self-driving. It's getting really good. They're releasing self-driving in a few different cities, and many of you may have taken a Waymo before too. So if you have, put that in the chat and let's chat about that a little bit. I've had a Tesla at one point and used the self-driving capability a few years ago, and it's good stuff. Like you're even seeing that in Fords and other cars where at least on the interstate it can do some self-driving for you. So that's another example of the blurring of the digital and physical world. And then really starting to see it on the manufacturing floor as well too. So I visited one of our clients a couple weeks ago and saw this really cool thing which I hadn't seen before, but it's called a modular lift. And basically what it does is it allows you can store up to 2,200 pounds in there. They used it mostly for smaller things like screws, nuts, some things that could go into something that you're putting together, but it goes up to the ceiling, but it allows you to retrieve everything that that you need from there. And it's actually connected to finance and supply chain management. So if you have something that's stored in that is requested on a sales order, bill of material, production order, whatever it might be, you can actually, it will actually go grab it for you, pull it down from wherever it is, and there's a little laser there that will point to what you need to grab. So this is a huge benefit for safety. Nobody's climbing up shelves. It's much faster than going and climbing up shelves, and it's connected right to the work order or the production order that you're putting together. So you're not having to hold that in your hand while you go up a few flight of stairs or flight of a ladder to go get the right thing that you need. That's just one example of where automation is blurring with the digital world. For any of you seen or heard about what Amazon's doing, but they bought a robotics company back about 12 years ago. And now they've got at least 200,000 robots running around their factories delivering shelving to the pickers and packers so they don't have to walk 10 miles every day when they're at their warehouse. So those are just a few examples of some of the ways that automation is hitting the manufacturing floor. I've talked to many manufacturers too who are employing like cobots, where they've got different tasks that are being done in their warehouse by particular bots. And of course, we've had automation of various different tasks in the warehouse for many years. Now it's really about having computers control that to a certain extent. So as we look to the future and think about what is Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution mean for us as leaders in this space. And the big thing is that everyone is going to be working with machines. So we're ushering in this age of human and machine collaboration. So if you think about it, you're going to have, if you're a manufacturing worker, you're going to be working with robots. You're going to be working with machines that need some potential programming or could potentially have an error. So as you think about the manufacturing resource in the future, they've got to be someone who can work with these machines. You're going to be programming machines potentially to do something that's hard or unsafe for a human. And if something doesn't work right, you might be going in there and overriding it. You might be teaching it new skills. You might be evaluating the results and making adjustments. These are all things that like the manufacturing technician in the future is going to have some skills to be able to work with these robots. And if for your office workers, they're going to be working with agents. So agents are really programmed pieces of code that will allow you to either talk to it through a chatbot kind of variety, through a voice, through texting, whatever it might be, or autonomous agents where it goes off and does stuff for you. But you are going to be using these agents to support the technology work that you're going to be doing. So, like Microsoft has some agents out there that we use a lot internally, like a researcher agent. They'll do deep research on any client that or prospect we're about to talk to. If we can find out everything about their business, we can use it for our clients to talk about to understand, have they submitted support cases? How are their projects going? What opportunities do they have open? We use the facilitator agent to help our meetings go faster. It will actually tell you how much time you have left in the meeting. It'll summarize the meeting. If you show up late, it'll say, here's what you missed in the first 5 minutes of the meeting. And if you are like me and you're overbooked for a lot of meetings, it will give you summaries of meetings you didn't even attend. So these are just some ways that agents are doing some work for us today, but this is a huge investment that we'll talk about more throughout the day. But all of that to say is, as a leader in an organization, you may be managing both people and agents. And as someone on the manufacturing floor, you might be managing, as a leader there, you might be managing both people and robots or other physical devices like that. So everyone's going to be working with machines more in the future, and I think we're just starting to see what that's going to potentially look like. So with this pace of change, it's been really fast over these past couple of years. If you think about, like, on the technology side, ChatGPT 3.0 just released at the end of November in 2022. It hit 100 million users in 2 months. Now they're looking at a billion users. And over 20% of the folks in the US are using ChatGPT today. And that doesn't even include some of the other AI-based technologies. So you can build software just so much faster than you could before by using some of these AI tools. And I was at a Microsoft conference a few weeks ago, and they said, our clients can't even keep up with the pace of innovation. The media can't even keep up with the pace of innovation that we have, because we're releasing new things, multiple new things every week. So they've gone to writing an email to specific folks at their clients to try to educate them on what's changing and what's different, because they just can't get media to cover them the same way in the past, because it's not like we're releasing something only a handful of times during the year. New agents are coming out all the time. So the pace of technology adoption is just so much faster than it's been. And if you think about what's going on in the business world, a new patent is registered every 20 seconds. So there's a ton of new innovation that's happening as well. There's AI-assisted drug discovery, protein designs that's cutting R&D cycles from years to months. New tools are starting to be able to learn from defects and self-improve. And just even on the non-technology side, it seems like our tariffs and tariff policies are changing every week as well too. So all of that just means that puts more pressure on us to be able to be flexible and to adapt to the world around us. So as they think about what do we need for leaders in the manufacturing space in the future, you think about, really, you need to have hyper learners. You need to have people who can learn, unlearn, and relearn continually. And that is a challenge. Somebody who's been with you for 40 years and been doing the same thing all along might not be the right person to be able to adapt in the same way that if you find those kind of people who are willing to change and adapt, that's you're going to need as things change here in the future. You're going to be looking for people who have not only the cognitive ability, but the emotional ability to have emotional intelligence and the behavioral ability to be able to work with different groups, different age groups, and be able to work with technology. So the hyper learners are going to be the folks that are curious and open-minded, have a quiet ego, and who are present and being additive, like being able to say yes and versus yes but. Those are the types of folks that are going to be the leaders in this new digital and plus physical age. And one of the biggest scarce resources that's going to be in the future, like what you're going to be looking for as you look to hire kids out of college or bring new people into your organization, you're really going to be looking for people who can collaborate well. So you're going to be looking for people who have that ability to bring people together. When I was out at Microsoft, they have this kind of work index that they share every year and talk about what the future of work is going to be like. And they talked about something I wasn't very knowledgeable. They talked about this idea of the Hollywood model. And what is that? If you think about as a director of a movie, right, you work on this movie for maybe 9 months. And in that movie set, you have these different producers and sound engineers and casting directors and actors and all of that. And then you finish the movie, you do the press for whatever release that comes out, and then you're on to your next movie. In your next movie, you're working with all different people, right? You're going to have different producers, different actors, different casting directors, different sound engineers, all of those things. So as you think about in work in the future, there's going to be a lot more project oriented work where you're going to work with one group to be able to get this project going and moving. And then you might go and work with a totally different group to do a different project. So Microsoft and this kind of work index sees a lot more of that kind of project oriented work in the future. And those projects are going to be made up of people and technology, whether that's agents or robots or whatever it is. So the ability to collaborate and work across these different teams is going to be one of the key resources that people are looking for in the future. So how do we prepare for this? So what are the things you can do to be ready for just the kind of constant change that's going to come with this fourth industrial revolution? So the first thing you got to do from a system standpoint is really look at your infrastructure. You need your infrastructure to be as flexible as possible because you need to be able to adapt to whatever is changing, whether that's a new integration that you have or new tariffs or a new partner distribution partner that you need to work with. You've got to be able to be flexible. So the best way to be flexible is to get to a cloud ERP and a solution that you could change fairly easily. So you're also going to be looking at connecting all the parts of your business together in one kind of centralized place. So if you've got a cloud ERP like Business Central, connecting your field service capabilities, your work orders are passing through that you can invoice them as quickly as you perform the work for that, for example. So those are some of the things you're going to want to be able to do because you may be able to have a robot in the future do some of the work on your behalf. And so that's going to need to be all automated if there's no people involved in doing some of that work. I also highly recommend you consider getting a portal to connect with your distribution network or your clients. So if you can engage more with the clients that you're shipping your materials to, who are doing distribution for you, or if you've got large clients that you can ship direct to, having that portal is just going to give you the ability to interact and maybe share information. And maybe they can buy online through your portal. Maybe they can use that portal to send in support related questions or to request something. Now you can have an agent be the front end of that and be able to have those folks self-serve more than they have in the past. And that will allow you to be able to focus more on the products that you're getting out the door and the innovation that you have for your particular product. So making sure that your infrastructure is flexible is really key to being able to be successful in this fourth industrial revolution. Next is take a look at your supply chain. What are the automation opportunities that you have there? What are ways you can save time, get product out faster? Look for the long pole in the tent. Look for the thing that's taking the longest and start there and go, is there a way I can make this faster? Is there a way I can buy a warehousing automation tool? Or is there a way that I can change the way I do this or reduce the number of parts that are in this particular bill of material or production configuration to be able to save time and be able to move faster. Also, take a look at the processes that you have that might have the greatest risk. And risk could mean health and safety risk. It could also mean just like tariff risk. Oh, we're getting this product from China and we're not sure what's going to happen with tariffs there. Is there a way I can replace this with something made domestically? And then take a look at some of the latest devices that are out there for your environment. So look at some of the automation providers and see what they've got. Go to some of their conferences and look at what they might be able to provide you that can save you time and automate your supply chain a little bit more than you have today. And then take the time to learn and get started with AI. So we've got a number of different ways to help you get started there. We have a Copilot flight school, which is really all about moving at your pace to get going with AI. Make sure that you understand like what does Copilot do? How do you turn that on for your Microsoft 365 Office workers? And then we start to introduce the concept of agents to you at the end of that as well too. And there are some quick things that you can do here. You can actually take all your product manuals that you probably spent a lot of years on and make those available 24/7 through an agent. Just make them queryable. So if somebody gets stuck on a problem, they can just go and chat with something or use the voice to chat with them and get the answer that they need much more quickly than having to call somebody or having to dig through a 200-page manual. AI is really good at being able to take that unstructured data and get it to you, somebody in a readable format. So that's one quick thing you could do if you have big product manuals or tons of descriptors about the products that you have. You can use the knowledge that you have of your products and your solutions to be able to deflect incoming support questions. So that was really have a portal, have the information about your products. All that information out there is going to save time for you having to have a human answer those questions that could easily be looked up, or you could easily use an agent or a bot to respond to. We're working on projects now to automate purchasing with a workflow and an agent. So if you get a low inventory threshold, you can actually automate creating a purchase order and even sending out that purchase order, even emailing a purchase order out to your supplier based on that low inventory threshold. So those are all things we can do today with agents and will only get better over time. If you serve markets globally, AI is incredibly good at translating materials. You can translate your materials to multiple different languages very quickly, or use a portal and allow for people to choose their own language on that portal and answer questions with a chatbot in the language of their choice. Now, you don't necessarily have to hire Spanish-speaking workers or whatever it might be that you're doing today to be able to answer some of those questions. But these are all things you could be doing right now. So I'm sure you'll get lots of other ideas as we go throughout the day, and really excited to share the schedule for today. So there's 2 different tracks. We've got a main stage and a side stage, and things will kick off right after I'm done today. So I highlighted a few here that I think you should check out, but really take a look at what's exciting, what's interesting to you, and make sure you interact in the chat as well too. So make sure you're asking questions as you see something that's presented. Our presenters are in the chat there ready to answer your questions. Feel free to reach out. And then at the end of the day, we have a keynote speaker, an outside keynote speaker that I'm really excited about. I think it's going to be a great presentation. So it's Alex Gorchev, and he's going to be joining us. He spent 15 years in leadership roles at Cisco, and then has served as the head of AI at Amgen and as a digital transformation advisor at Dell as well too. So he's going to talk a little bit about how AI and automation are transforming the workforce. So he'll address concerns about this rapid technology change that we talk about AI's impact on jobs and business, and give you some strategies around how to organize for this, like I shared today. In closing, I want to take a minute to thank you for attending. Thank you for being engaged today and asking questions, and certainly love to hear from you. after today on what you learned, what you want to do next. Is there something that we can do to help support you in your digital transformation journey? And just keep thinking about some of those ways that you can get ahead of this technological revolution or this fourth industrial revolution as it's coming really fast. So with that, I will let you go and enjoy the rest of the day. And again, I hope you have a great day.